Hi again. In this segment, I'm going to create a new class in BlueJ. Here I am, BlueJ window. I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to name it, what should we name it? Let's see. We'll call it chapter 2, CH2, because this is sort of a review of chapter 2 in our textbook. And there it is. I'll move that over here. Now I found in teaching a non-virtual Java class that after a couple of periods of talking about chapter 2, the kids in the class still had some problems putting all the pieces together. And then I went through and from scratch created a program that used all of the new things that were covered in chapter 2, the new aspects of Java that were covered in chapter 2 in the book. So we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to do this a little bit quickly just to keep the file size down, but I'll also try to go slow enough so that everything is clear. So when we're doing a new program, a new class, we always start with public class, and we'll call this class CH2. We have actually named it CH2. And you notice that there's no semicolon there or no parentheses there. Right, then we do the opening brace. So everything from here on in is inside this class. Now, classes consist of methods and fields. Fields are not in methods. They are outside of all the methods, and they are variables that hold information that you want all of the methods to have access to. So these are usually defined as private so that only the methods of the class can access them. Other classes that need to access this information have to access it through accessor methods. So let's say we'll make an integer variable called age, and we'll make a string variable called name, and should that be lowercase? String. And we will make a Boolean variable called, let's see, what should we call that? We'll call it voting, can vote. So if the person is 18, then they can vote. Okay? Now again, notice that those are all outside of any methods. So now we're going to do our first method. And let's see. We're going to make this public. And we're going to name it CH2. And we're not going to give it any parameters. But even if a method doesn't have anything passed into it, you need to do the parentheses. Okay? No semicolon at the end of a method name, just the way there's no semicolon at the end of the class name. Right? So in this method, which you should be going, oh, I know what kind of method that is. That's a special method. That's a constructor method. Why do we know it's a constructor method? Because it has no return type, number one, and because it has the same name as the class. Okay? So in this method, we're going to initialize our three variables. So we're going to say age, our three fields, which are variables. Age equals, I don't know, let's start with 0. And name equals, and we'll put nothing. We'll put 2 quotation marks right next to each other, which is the empty string. And we'll say can vote equals false. Right? Can vote's a Boolean, so it could only be true or false. So we'll finish that off. Now I could here have passed in values to set these variables to. So, but let's make a second constructor that will do that. So I always like to copy and paste where possible. And here's our second constructor. Now, I don't have to change the name, because if I have a second constructor with a different set of parameters than the other constructor, Java is going to think that's just fine. Which constructor actually gets called depends upon what parameters are supplied when I call the when I make a new object of this type. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to pass in age, an int, which I'll call age, and a string, which I'll call name, and a Boolean, which I'll call can vote. Okay? And let's just see if this compiles. Oh, where did I? Missing closing brace here. Okay, compile. Excellent. All right, now, those of you who have finished Chapter 2 and studied it carefully know that there's a real problem here. And that problem is that local variables, and parameters are local to the method that they're in, override, when they have the same name as fields, they override the field names. So this age here, in fact, doesn't refer to this variable, this field variable. It actually refers to this parameter variable. So if I change age here, I'm not changing this, I'm just changing this local variable age. Okay? So an easy way to handle this, there are other ways that we'll learn later, but an easy way is to just give these different names. So we'll say, whoops, I didn't, let me back up. If I had done that, name equals age equals age, if name equals name, if can vote equals can vote. Again, all of these, both of these refer to that. The age refer to this age, not that age variable. Both these names refer to this name variable, this parameter, which is local, etc. Okay? So a quick way to fix this is to just give these a different name. So age temp. Right, I'll just copy and paste that at the end of all of these. Name temp, can vote, temp. And then I would do this here. And in that case, since age is not overshadowed by a local variable, this age refers to the field age, and so on. Okay? So be careful about that. If you use parameters in a constructor or a method that have the same name as fields, you won't actually be accessing the fields. You'll be just dealing with the local variable that has the same name. Okay? Good. Okay, let me just get something like that to line up. Good. All right, now we're going to make an, let's see, should we make an accessor or a mutator method first? Well, let's make a mutator method first. So we're not going to make mutator methods for all the fields. We're just going to make them for one. So let's make it for age. So we'll make a mutator method called public, and we'll call it birthday. And this mutator method doesn't need any parameters for reasons that you'll see in just a minute. So every time we call the birthday method, what we're going to do is we're going to increase the age of the person. So what we'll say here is simply age equals age plus 1. So we're going to add 1 to the person's age every time we call the birthday mutator method. Now you could write age plus plus, right? And as you get more used to Java, you'll use that shortcut. Either one would work. So that's it for that mutator method. And now let's make an accessor method. And that again is public. And we'll call it get name. And we're not going to pass in anything. And all we're doing here, let's just move that up a bit, is returning, whoops, if we're returning something, then we better say what we're returning. So we're returning a string. So we're going to return name. Okay? So we access that accessor method, gives us back the value in the field name, and that value is a string. So we have to make sure that those match up. Okay? And let's just make a print method really quickly. We'll print one thing because if you can do one line, all the other lines are similar. This is a void. Oh, I just noticed something right here. This method does not return anything, so I better make it void. Okay, so public void print info, and we're just going to print the field, so we don't need to pass anything in. So we do system.out.println, and we'll mix some text here. The name colon space plus the variable that actually contains the person's name. Name. Close the quote. Semicolon. Okay? And I could do, right, I could do one of those for each thing. So we'll just, since we can copy and paste so quickly, we'll just do another one. So we'll do age, right? Well, don't forget that space inside the quotes if you want it there, but you know, it's only going to print out a space if it's inside the quotation marks. Anything outside of the space will be ignored. Okay? And now let's do a final method with an if statement. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to check and see whether they're 18, and if they are, we're going to make sure that canVote equals, if 18 or greater, we're going to make sure that canVote equals true. Okay, so public, this isn't going to return anything. We'll call this voting status. And we're actually changing set vote status, like that. Right? Nothing's passed in because again we're accessing the fields. So what we will say here is if age is greater than 17, I actually need that space there. I just like the way it looks better. It's easier for me to read. If age is greater than 17, then I'm going to do, what's our field? canVote. What's our field? I'll just copy that, it'll be quicker. If age is greater than 17, then canVote is not false. canVote is true. Okay? And I could put as many things as I want in between those two braces, in between these two braces, right? I could do dozens of lines. Else, spell that correctly. Else, and just again copy, you should always copy when you can to speed things up. canVote equals false, right? If their age is not greater than 17, they can't vote yet, right? And just get rid of that empty space there. And that's the way it works. Now I'm just going to add one thing that we haven't dealt with yet, which is a local variable. So local variable is any variable that's declared within a method, right? It's a little different than a parameter, which is really also declared within the method. But remember, parameters are used for the special purpose of passing information into a method. Local variables, on the other hand, are just created within the method and are for just temporary storage within that method. So we'll call this, let's see, how about a Boolean called changed vote status? And actually we'll initialize that right there, which you can do, to false. Okay? So we're only going to set that to true is if we actually change their voting status. They can vote from true to false. Or either way, if we just changed it, right? If it's the same, then we won't do anything. So what we need to do there, actually, let's back up. We'll use another if statement to check if it changed. So we'll say, use a local variable changed votes. Sometimes this happens, okay? I came up with a better idea. We'll call this previous IOUS status. And we know that the previous status, this is really the previous status before the if statement that's just below this. So previous status equals can vote, okay? So these are both Booleans, so if they can vote, if can vote is true when you come into this, then previous status is equal to true, okay? If can vote is false when you come into this, then previous status is equal to false. So what we're going to do then down here is add another if statement. Now I bet you can guess what it is. If previous status equals can vote. Remember for the double equal sign, don't forget that, right? Equality is tested in Java with two equal signs. A single equal sign means assignment. If they're the same, it means that we could do, we've already got a system out println here, so we'll copy that. System out println, we'll just do no change in voting status. We don't need that. We just copy that down. Don't need it. Okay? And so then we could do copy that. Else voting, just make it easy, made change in voting status. Okay? Right? So if these are different from when they started out up here, because they're made the same up here with the equal sign, right? It's saying make this one, make that equal to that. So we know they're exactly the same. We come down through this if statement, we change can vote. We may change can vote if depending upon the value of age, right? And if we do change it, then can vote may or may not have changed. Interesting. Well, in our case, we know that can vote was initialized to false, right? So if we pass this in and age is less than 17, then canVote will not change, so there will be no change to the voting status. Okay? So let's actually see, let's compile this. Oh, okay, we're missing a closing brace for this method. And we'll compile that. And good, and let's see how this works. Okay, we'll move this off for a minute so we can actually, no, we don't need to go too far. Just go there, and we will make a, we'll just make a, here are the two constructors, so we'll use the one that doesn't take in any parameters. And we'll just call this voter1. Okay, and let's inspect this. And the age is the default age of 0, which the default constructor uses. Has no name, and canVote is false. Okay, so now let's, what do we have here? Let's, we don't have anything to change the name. We didn't add that. It's kind of irritating, but that's okay. So let's call vote birthday, void birthday, sorry, and inspect. Oh, and the age is now 1. So can we, let's do that a bunch of times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is tedious. 6, 7. Well, that's too tedious. Let's inspect that. Yep, we're up to 8. Okay. Let's make a new one. We use the other constructor. And this, we'll call this one voter2. Okay? And here's the first parameter, and BlueJay's telling us we need an integer value here. So we'll do 18. And we'll say here, let's do Barack Obama. And we'll, for the heck of it, we'll say false. Actually, let's make Barack Obama 17, and we'll make, so he's 17, so he cannot vote. Okay? And we'll say okay. The instance of, can't have spaces in the names of objects. There we go. Okay, so there's voter2. Let's inspect voter2. All right. Voter2 is 17. Voter2's name is Barack Obama, and voter2's voting status is false because they're not yet 18. So let's now call void set vote status. Okay, there's no change in the voting status because we didn't change it. The voting status was false, and since Barack is still 17, that did not change. Okay? So now let's go and let's run the birthday method. Okay? Let's inspect to see what that did. Excellent. Okay, so Barack is now 18. And if we call this method the set vote status, may change in voting status. This line was left over from the previous call. BlueJay won't clear this window unless you set it to do that up in the options. So this is just from the previous call to that method. So that appears to have worked. It made a change in Barack's voting status. Let's go just make sure that that's true with an inspection. And excellent, it's true. And finally, let's just call this print info method. And that did that. Remember, this stuff is left over from previous calls. So that's it for this method, right? We went through a lot of stuff very quickly, and but I hope in going through it, you have a better sense of how fields work. They're variables that are accessible from all the methods in the class. How constructors work. We have 2 different constructors here. This is a mutator method, because we are actually changing age, one of the fields. A method that changes one of the fields is a mutator method. This is an accessor method because it returns the value in one of the fields. This is really just a print method. And then we have setVote_status, which is a mutator method because it's changing one of the fields, potentially changing one of the fields. And we have a local variable which only exists within this method. Okay? That's it for now. Thanks.